Thank you, Xabier. I'm Arnau Monterde from the Open University of Catalonia. I'm part of the CDIM team, and thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I'll try to explain how the CDIM works and to show some screenshots, and then we can answer your questions, okay? First of all, the CDIM as a software is a software designed to be to scale and to be spread to everywhere. It's not just thinking for the City Council of Barcelona. Is it thinking to be used wherever, for public institutions, for social organizations, or for any organizations who want to have a kind of democratic governance in their organization. We always talk about democratic infrastructure. This is not just a software project. This is a political project. It's a technological project, but it's also that we say that we call all the time technopolitical project, because we combine all the time political aspects with technological aspects, and we cannot separate the technology and the politics, because the technology has a lot of political implications. And for example, to decide how we can design a participatory process, it's very political, because we are influencing in the way that the people is doing the democracy. And I think that this is a clear point. The CDIM tries to structure and standardize and give quality to the participatory process. Participatory process is today probably the most important participation unit, but we are designing other participatory units as citizen initiative or citizen councils or other things that we have in our roadmap that we can explain later. But today the CDIM articulate a lot of participatory process. And we try all the time to build a platform that has to be open, has to be accessible, has to be easy to participate, and has to be democratic in the way in which we build. The CDIM software and the platform allows you to propose, to create meetings, to deliberate, to decide, to vote, to get support. We have a lot of functionalities working today in the software. We have created this kind of abstraction of the software because we believe that each city council has to be the right to define how a participatory process has to be. In this sense, we create this software very configurable, in the sense that you can decide which are the stages of your participatory process and what the citizens can do in each phase. And this is very easy to configure. Here you have an example of the administration panel, but then we're gonna inside it. We have also a prototype, an initial prototype of participatory budgeting, where you can choose different projects and you can vote according to the amount of money that each project value. And one of our main concerns, and probably the CDIM is one of the platforms that tries to solve this question about the integration between digital and physical participation. We designed this kind of active integration between the participation in the meetings and how to gather this information to the platform, and how the information from the physical meetings go inside to the flow of the digital participation in the platform. And then we have this specific thing about the software. The software is modular, and what does it mean? It means that we have like different modules of the software, and if you want to develop a new functionality, you create a new module. but you don't have to touch the other models. What does it mean? This means that it's very flexible to growth because we keep the different models separated, and we define the way in which between the different models communicate between themselves, but you can create new models. The platform is written in Ruby, Ruby and Rails, the framework and the language programming. And yes, for a moment we have created these models that you can check it in GitHub project because it's open. How it works? Let's go inside the Decidim. You can also navigate going to decidim.barcelona. But basically, we have the registration pages. All the principles that Xabier has explained to you are inserted in the code and in the platform. When you register, you sign a kind of social contract where we guarantee all the democratic issues that we consider necessary that a public or public common infrastructure has to needs for a political participation in a city council. And yes, you also can register by social networks. We have different participatory processes, as Xabier has explained you. And then how a participatory process is organized. We define the different phases that participatory process has to be. You can decide all the phases that you have, and then you decide which components has in different phases. For example, if you want to create an initial phase of diagnosis, you can ask the component of survey. You can create a survey that the citizens can answer the survey, and you have, for example, this first phase. If you want to add some physical meetings in this initial phase, you can add it too. You create like your participatory process as you want. For a moment, we are tying with these components. Each of these components is a model in the software. We have the model of proposals, the supports, meetings, debates, comments, and deliberation. You can give arguments in favor, against something, or neutral. If you want to identify how is going the deliberation process, we have the participatory budgeting, and we have a component of results to monitor what happened in the participatory process. And then we have a new model that we are now testing just those days about accountability. And this is great because we can track what happened with the results. The results is like the first part of participatory process, but then we need to track what happens with the results. Are these results getting applied? And this component allows us to see the evolution and the execution of these results. We have also visualizations and open data. Here you have an example of proposal. We have the title, and then you have a box for supports, and then you can share it in the social networks, and also you can embed. You can have your proposal and embed to your website if you want to spread it. Here we have the physical meetings. We have a map based on OpenStreetMaps because we don't use privative software and dependencies. And also we have the whole picture of what is happening in the city. Then we have debates. We have different types of debates. Here you can see for example, we have an example of some comments in favor. We show in green and against in yellow color, and you can identify and follow the conversation. Then this is an example of a result, and this is also interesting because when we finish the participatory process, we have this kind of metadata that it shows us the participation history of this proposal. For example, how many people has participated, how many supports has collected, how many meetings this proposal have been discussed. For example, we have a lot of metadata from the whole participatory process, and this is this thing that we call it traceability, because we can see what the history of participation, and you have, for example, below the list of proposals related to this result. And then here is the component of accountability. Here we have an example, and we can see that the 35% of the whole process is executed. We have also the visualizations that Xabier has shown you. This is the user page where you can configure all your avatar and your personal data. You manage the notifications. Here you can remove your account if you want, and you have also your verification status. And then here we have our administration panel where we can manage all the participation process. Is it designed to be used because a lot of new cities are starting to use the software, and they need like a clear specifications how the software works, and we need that the user experience of the administration panel has to be very good, because it has to be also reutilizable. And then we have a development plan for the CDIM. We are working on the participation councils. The participation councils are very important in Barcelona and also in Catalonia, but basically is to have an organization inside the CDIM, and you can vote, for example, for the members of this organization, and you can follow their meetings, and you have like a kind of transparency of these participation councils. We are also developing citizen initiative, the collect of signatures, digital signatures for a citizen initiative. We are working also a kind of component for collaborative legislation to amendate collaborative text and create legislation, collaborative legislation, and yes. And also we are trying to imagine how we can create the conditions in which the users or the participants, we don't like too much the notion of user, because the participants are citizens active, and we try to imagine how they can communicate between themselves without to be mediated by the city council. At also a long-term development, we are trying to federate the different instances of the CDIM. We are working on different projects for a distributed backend to manage the digital ID using blockchain technology. We are working on the secure electronic voting integration, digital signatures, gamification, and the application mobile. And here we have one of the pictures of the active instances of the CDIM. We have the CDIM Barcelona, but we have probably the seven cities with more. The 7 cities most important in Catalonia. For example, Badalona, Gavà, Sabadell, Terrassa, Sant Cugat. Other cities from Spain as Pamplona, and also the regional government of Catalonia is starting to use the software. And we have a kind of democratic contract with them, because we don't want just that they use the software. We want that they preserve the democratic principles of the software. And we have added the democratic contract or social democratic contract to the code, but also we try to sign an official document between governments, local governments, to have this kind of contract. And yes, here you have the different institutions working on the project. And yeah, just when with the city, we see that we are creating a new kind of generation, of networks. We come from the social networks, and we're creating political networks in the sense that the networks are built to govern the cities with the people. In this sense, we are creating networks for democracy. We are creating networks guaranteeing rights, basic rights like the privacy, for example, or the security in order to participate in a political way. And probably the city in Barcelona is one of the most advanced experiments in this way, because we have a lot of support from the political part. Barcelona is a reference in this sense, and we are trying to design software with this techno-political view, with the citizens, with the communities, with the organizations, to create these new infrastructures or democratic commons. Thank you.
I must confess, quite impressive. So, questions, please.
Well, first of all, guys, thank you for the presentation. It was really, really interesting and inspiring. I had two questions. One is practical, and the other one is about the first part, and the other one is about the second. 72% of the proposals that are being made by citizens go through, 28 not. On what basis is that being decided? Because maybe I didn't hear it. Is there like a vote, or are there certain criteria that have to be checked out or not? So how does that happen exactly? And the second question was about, you ended by saying we transformed from social media to from social networks to political networks. On social media and social networks, you have one issue, which is the moderation. You have, in the theory of polarizations, you have the pushers, the people who are on social media, not to find solutions, but only to create polarization and trolls and other people who are there to pollute the debate. Are there also these kind of voices who engage in the debates that you have on the platform that you create within the city, and how do you moderate or filter them? Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very good questions. Well, every participatory process has different types of decision making. So they are purely bottom up, like participatory budgeting, whatever people vote for. Those projects that get more votes get selected, and then will have to be executed. And the only limit of the project is that you fill the budget. So if there is €500,000 to be spent, you select projects to fill this €500,000 budget, and the sum of all the people's basket, if you want, is what is finally implemented. But in the specific case of the strategic planning, the decision making was bottom up and top down. So people could propose, people could also vote, and then the government team went through all 10,000 proposals, and they integrated them, and some of them were rejected. About 3,000 proposals were rejected, and every single one of those rejections was argued and explained. Well, we couldn't accept this for some reason. Maybe it's a legal reason. This is not something the city council can do. We cannot change the health system. I'm sorry. Some others were probably political. Well, we don't agree with this. People voted for us to do something, and this is racist. We don't accept it. And so the different reasons. Something super interesting about the platform, there are a bunch of research groups taking all the data. One of them that we gave them a prize because for the project, and now we will see the results in a few months. They want to apply artificial intelligence and different statistics measures to see what are the patterns of rejection. Can we deduce statistically with artificial intelligence what is the political bias of the government? Well, this is really good, right? And this is something we can check. So in this case, there was a tension, and that was really productive and very interesting because some proposals had a lot of votes, and for the politicians that were finally taking the decision whether to accept it or not, the number of votes was very important. Rejecting a proposal with 2,000 votes is something difficult to do. You're going to have to pay a price for it. So that's how the negotiation or the tension between bottom-up and top-down worked with the strategic planning, and we think it's a good idea. For the next time, I'm fairly sure they will accept our recommendation, because we are designing the software where we cannot design public policies and how government decides on it. But the idea of having a threshold, that you will only evaluate those proposals that get at least 10 votes, for example. Because evaluating 10,000 proposals is crazy. But it is doable, and they did it. Or we did it, because I'm part of the government and the administration. It's a bit crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, the question of moderation, it's funny because we have not had trolls in the platform for a moment. And it's incredible, or almost we don't have trolls. But the moderation is, you can report, for example, if you find any content offensive, you can denounce. And then we have a moderation. But when you publish, the content is published immediately. And then we moderate. And it's interesting because, for example, the people who were in the team moderating, they found one proposal and they thought that was conflictive, but they were 1 week deliberating if they have to hide, and which were the implications of to hide this. But it's interesting, and this is important to understand that we have 2 levels of verification. You can create an account, and you can do proposals and give support to the comments, but you cannot give support to the proposals if you are not verified. And if you want to verify, you have to do it with the local census. You give your ID, your date of birth, and your postal code, and then we query to the census, but we don't gather the data. But in the moment that you provide this data, probably you feel that this is kind of official, and then you measure more if you want to troll. Now we have a troll proposals, but we cannot hide it because this is the
Okay. Thank you. Okay, it's now clear how things are decided, which proposals pass and which don't. But what's the role of the city council and the city councillors? You say this is all this project is an alternative for representative democracy, but there are some people chosen. There's also an opposition. What's their role still, or do they not matter anymore? Is it a direct relationship between the government team and the citizens, and the people chosen by the do not matter anymore?
They do, very much. Otherwise, this project wouldn't exist right now. However, it's complementary, right? Because, well, first of all, it's what the representatives choose to be open to participation, what is on the platform. And this is already a big power. And also a big bet, because it's risky for them to open many subjects to participation. And it's quite, I think the government we have is very brave on genuinely opening to participation, and genuine participation, a participation that you can monitor, track, etc. So it's they still have a role to play, obviously, especially that of responsibility. I think there will always be people that have the responsibility to carry out projects, to balance budgets, to do a number of services to the citizens and make some decisions. It's just the amount of decision making that is returned to society that's been negotiated right now. So one of the participatory processes was the new regulation for participation. This new regulation designs a landscape where there is 3 types of democracy. The classical representative democracy with political parties. The one where, like participatory processes, there is always a negotiation between what the political parties in power and the citizens propose, and all this negotiation going on. And the other is direct democracy, consultations, referendums, all types of, if you collect sufficient signatures, citizen initiative can reach the state of having to be consulted, like in Switzerland. So this is one model that we're inspired in, but there are many others. And the ecosystem of democratic mechanisms is what governs the city.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, very impressive. I was wondering if you ever evaluated how much change this has created. So I can imagine many new ideas came up, but are there old ideas who completely disappeared from the agenda, for instance?
Well, we don't have much time for these analytics because we're so much involved in the software and the platform and everything. And well, first of all ideas are not left out for two reasons. One is that older people interact a lot through digital means. So this idea of, oh, you have a digital platform, huh? All people are left outside, and because they don't know about technology. Well, that's bullshit. I've seen many, and we do public meetings. Okay.
I think I didn't express myself clear. I mean things that were previously on the agenda, on the political agenda, which completely disappeared because now through the participation, people came up with many new ideas.
Okay.
So I'm wondering how much change did the participation cause in the decision making?
Okay, but this is difficult because we don't have open data of how decisions were made before. And so it's difficult to evaluate. We hope something like this project is about a year old. So we cannot really have a proper assessment of the impact. But I think 10 years from now, when you have data about 10 years of digital, and you can, and everything is transparent and traceable, you'll be able to really see if the citizens pushed in this direction, public policies, or in another direction, or how different lobbies interact, because the platform makes that possible to analyze and study. So I cannot answer your question like analytically, but we are seeing a transformation on the policies, and also the enthusiasm of the people, because when they see the proposal is available to everybody else, like previously, this is not the first attempt of Barcelona City Council to implement some digital means for participation, but most of previous models were very similar to sending an email. You send me an email, I'm the City Council, I read it or not, I reply to you, maybe always very politely, but that's it. I don't know what happened with that. As a citizen, I don't know if other people had the same worry. I don't know if other people agree with me or not. And I don't have an official answer from City Council. I can show the response email to my friends, but it's not public, and therefore it cannot be audited and so on and so forth. This is what is possible with the CDM, and this is also changing a lot the way in which government reacts to proposals from citizens.
And this is interesting also in the same way the cultural changes in the administrative layer, in the layer of the public workers who are trying to work on the CDM to study the proposals and decide which proposals evaluate the cost and to apply these proposals. It's crazy how they are initially against the platform, but then they start to use it and then start to put in the center of the public policy, and it's creating a kind of an institutional change inside the city council.
Okay, we have time for one last question, and somebody who didn't ask a question yet, please.
Thank you. Is there any reference to statutes of the city to your platform, or how do you ensure that this goes into the process of governing of the city and it's not just the goodwill of the current government, but that it stays also for potential not so open next government?
Yeah, very good question. Right now, you're absolutely right, is the will of the team that is governing the city to accept it or not. And obviously, it's risky for them to say, I will be committed to whatever is decided in this process and then not doing it. But ultimately is on the hands. But as I mentioned before, one of the participatory processes is the new regulation for participation. And this new regulation is already written. You can read it if you read Spanish or Catalan because it hasn't been translated to English. Whenever it's approved by mid-September, we're hoping, it will be compulsory, it will become law. And the platform is included on the regulation as a direct mean for democratic participation. So everything will be legally supported, so to speak, very soon.